Right, so decision anxiety, okay? So I think this is probably the first challenge that most young men, say you're 18 or you're 21 years old, out of university, out of school, I think this is the first big challenge that people face. And learning how to overcome it is just going to set you apart from your peers, right? It's going to allow you to achieve your goals in a much shorter frame of time and time frame. Don't know why I said that. And I think the reason why young men face this so quickly is because when you're 18, when you're a kid, basically, the path is set out before you. Even if you're in uni, the path is set out before you. So let's say to 21, you know you're just going to go to uni, you know you're just going to do these exams, you know you're going to get this qualification, this bachelor's degree, this master's degree. That's it. But when you go out into the real world and you get a job, or you do what, you leave school, you leave education, you've got to make a life for yourself, which is much more difficult because there's just so many decisions, so many choices. You're spoiled for choice in what you can do. And when your whole life you've just been told that there's just this direction, the only choice you have is really what subjects do you want to take, which doesn't really matter either way. When that's the direction that you've been given since you were 21, from 21, right? 21 since you were in school, it's very hard to suddenly just be like, oh yeah, you're making all these decisions now, and if you fuck up, you might be homeless. So I think that's why it's such a big issue for young men and young women. And I just want to sort of take you through how I personally have overcome it in certain situations in my life. So the first situation for me was actually in a relationship, okay? And this was the first time I actually had to overcome any level of decision anxiety for myself, and it felt like a big decision. And I'm actually going to read straight from my diary, so you're getting my exact thoughts. This was 11th of December 2024, right? So almost a year ago. So, and I was sort of deciding whether to get back with my ex, and here's exactly what I wrote. I'm nervous to some extent. She's a great girl, but I don't want to make the wrong decision. I think that a big worry is just whether it's the right thing for me, right? So you can see that. I think that illustrates my mindset at the time. I was just nervous about making the wrong decision. And you probably can relate to that if you've gone through a breakup. You're not sure whether it's the right decision, especially if you like the person. There's just, you either break up with them and then face the consequences of that, or you stay with them and face the consequences of that decision. So the fear of uncertainty, breaking up with her or getting back with her, and the unknown was ironically more painful than the actual outcome. And it was more painful than actually just taking action. Right, and that's sort of the crux of decision anxiety, I think, is that the weighing up of your options is fine, but when you get stuck in that decision and you just don't end up taking any action, you do that because it feels more comfortable in the moment, right? It's like, okay, I'm not gonna accept the pain of just breaking up with her, right? Because it's gonna be painful, but actually in the long run, it causes you a lot more pain than just breaking up with someone. And I think that's a key point to take home. Going back to the story, eventually we didn't get back together, we broke up. And of course I was sad, as you would be. But one thing I noticed was that the excitement came back, right? That fire inside me, it came back so quickly. Well, not so quickly, but it came back, Suddenly I was looking forward to the future, even though suddenly my future wasn't with this person. Like, I'd planned out, okay, it's going to be with this person and we're going to do this and we're going to have kids and we're going to get married. Suddenly it was like, oh, all that's gone. But now it's exciting because, like, oh, I can craft my own future. Like, I'm going to go to Guatemala. Like, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. And that was just so exciting. And although I had to incur the pain of the breakup, taking action resulted in me having a better outcome, right? Even if I decided to stay with her, right, it would have been better than being in this zone of limbo where this limbo zone where you're not getting any outcome and you're just getting pain, right? That's the key point. And I think looking back at it, it was the correct decision, right? And I think she would agree as well. It was the correct decision. So that was sort of the first time I overcame decision anxiety, and it was just such a great feeling to move past that and realize on the other side of it, it's not all doom and gloom, but there's positives on the other side. The other example I wanted to give was the example of quitting my job. And obviously this is still ongoing and I don't yet know the outcome, right? Which I think makes it even more exciting. Like not knowing whether this was the right decision or not is exciting. Because the outcome is still unknown, right? We're in the middle of this. So the main thing was that I knew I was unhappy and I knew I wasn't aligned with who I was, right, at that job. And, nothing against the people, it's got nothing to do with that. It's just me as a person, right? And I just knew I wasn't satisfied. I was crashing out like every day at work with one of my work colleagues and not at him, but like with him, we were both crashing out. And I just realized like, I need to do something about this. But the problem was that before that point, I wasn't in enough pain to actually take action. And the funny thing about this is decision anxiety is that often if you're in like pain, like 4 out of 10 pain, right? It's not enough to incur the short-term cost of taking action. It's not enough pain to do that. And so you end up just incurring 4 out of 10 pain for however long. Whereas when you have a week where you're incurring like 8 out of 10 pain, suddenly you have to do something, you have to take action, right? And that's what ended up happening with me. Also looking back on the situation, that breakup situation that I told you about. So I had a bit more perspective and I understood that taking action was a good thing. But yeah, basically I had a week where it was just a rough week and I was like, okay, I have to do something about this. Like I've had these ideas in my brain, but I have to actually take action and move on, right? I incurred enough pain to actually take action. And I just took the jump. I walked into my boss's office and I was like, yeah, just let you know I'm quitting. He was very friendly about it, very, very understanding about it. And leaving that office, firstly, making the decision, I just couldn't stop smiling because I knew it was in line with who I am. And leaving that office, I just couldn't stop smiling. I was on cloud 9. And yeah, it was just a great decision. Even though like the decision was brought on by incurring pain. And it was a scary decision. But I knew immediately as I, made that decision that it was the correct decision. And I just felt more aligned with who I am. And obviously, I don't know the outcome of this. Like perhaps in a year, I'm going to be making a video of like how I failed as an entrepreneur and going back to the employment as an accountant. But even then, I wouldn't see this as a failure, right? So yeah, I think that was just such a good lesson that I learned and from the breakup, and then I was able to integrate it into this next decision with quitting my job. I think in terms of the take home for you personally in your life, I think if you relate to these in any way, the worst thing that you can do is nothing, right? If you're in a situation, you've got a breakup, you're trying to quit your job, analyze the decision, obviously, try to make the right decision, but the worst thing you can do is just sit and do nothing. Even if you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to quit my job. Let's say that's one of your decisions. It's like, okay, I'm not going to quit my job. Even that, at least stick with it and be like, okay, I'm going to go all in at my job. I'm going to try my hardest. Don't just be like, oh yeah, my decision is not to quit my job. But then like still in the back of your mind, think about the other decision, just commit fully to something. And just remember that I've heard a funny saying. It was something like, just make a decision because either way you're going to regret it, which I'm not sure if I agree with that, like, outcome on life, you know, that idea of life, but if that brings some value to you, maybe take home something from that. I think the main thing is just to remember that action brings clarity.